Christopher Langan works on a horse ranch in Missouri. He breeds horses, he lifts weights, he lives a quiet life far from universities and academic circles. But he has an IQ between 195 and 210, making him one of the smartest people ever measured. And he claims he's done something no philosopher or theologian has managed in thousands of years. He says he's mathematically proven that God exists. Not through faith, not through religious texts, through pure logic and mathematics. He spent decades developing a theory he calls the cognitive theoretic model of the universe. It's dense, it's complex, and if he's right, it changes everything we think we know about reality, consciousness, and existence itself. Langan started talking at 6 months old. By age 3, he was reading. By high school, he was teaching himself advanced mathematics and physics. He scored perfectly on the SAT, even though he fell asleep during the test. Universities wanted him, but his life took unexpected turns. He came from poverty. His stepfather was abusive. He worked labor jobs to survive. He attended college but dropped out twice when financial aid problems left him unable to continue. The academic world lost track of him. He ended up working as a bouncer at bars on Long Island. The smartest man in America, checking IDs and breaking up fights. But he never stopped thinking. While working security, while breeding horses, while living life outside academia, he was developing his theory. The cognitive theoretic model of the universe, the CTMU. The CTMU is not easy to understand. Langan writes in dense technical language, mixing mathematics, physics, philosophy, and logic. Most people, even educated ones, struggle to follow his papers, but the core idea is understandable. Langan starts with a simple question. Why does anything exist instead of nothing? This is the fundamental question of philosophy. Why is there something rather than absolute void? His answer begins with self-reference. The universe, according to Langan, is self-contained and self-creating. It doesn't exist inside space and time. Space and time exist inside it. The universe is not a thing in a container. The universe is the container that contains itself. This sounds paradoxical. How can something contain itself? Langan uses mathematics to show it's possible. Self-referential systems can exist. A set can be a member of itself. Language can describe language. Consciousness can be aware of consciousness. Self-reference is not impossible. It's fundamental to existence. The universe, in Langan's model, is not made of matter and energy primarily. It's made of information, pure information that processes itself. The universe is essentially a self-processing information system. Reality is computational at its deepest level. This information isn't just data, it's meaning, it's semantic. The universe understands itself. It has to, in order to process its own information consistently. This understanding, this self-awareness of the universe, is what Langan identifies as God. God, in the CTMU, is not a separate being who created the universe from outside. God is the self-awareness of reality itself, the universe knowing itself, the totality of existence being conscious of its own existence. This is not the personal God of traditional religion. Langan's God doesn't make decisions or answer prayers in the conventional sense. It's more like the God of Spinoza or Einstein, the deep underlying intelligence and order of existence itself. But Langan goes further than just proposing this idea. He claims to prove it must be true through logical necessity. His argument runs like this. The universe exists. This is undeniable. Even if you doubt everything else, the fact that something is happening cannot be doubted. Existence is the one absolute given. But existence requires some explanation. Things don't exist for no reason. Even if that reason is just, that's how it is, there needs to be some principle or framework that allows existence. Traditional physics says the universe started with the Big Bang. But what caused the Big Bang? What existed before it? If you say nothing, then how did something come from nothing? If you say something existed before, then you haven't explained the origin. You've just pushed the question back. Langan says this infinite regress problem proves that the universe must be self-causing. It must contain its own explanation. It must be self-sufficient. It cannot depend on anything outside itself, because there is no outside. For something to be truly self-causing, it must exist necessarily. Its existence cannot be contingent on anything else. It must exist by logical necessity, not by chance or by dependence on other things. But how can something exist by logical necessity? Only if its nature is such that non-existence is impossible. Only if existence is built into what it is. This is where Langan brings in consciousness and self-awareness. A purely mechanical, unconscious universe has no reason to exist. It's contingent. It could be otherwise. But a self-aware universe that knows itself must exist because self-awareness requires existence. You cannot be aware of yourself without existing. The act of self-awareness creates existence. Or more precisely, self-awareness and existence are the same thing. To be is to be aware. The universe exists because it is aware of itself. This self-awareness is self-causing, self-sustaining, and logically necessary. This self-aware totality of existence is what Langan calls God, not a person, not a being among other beings, but being itself, existence itself, the self-aware ground of all reality. The CTMU tries to make this rigorous through mathematical structures. Langan uses concepts from set theory, category theory, and logic to formalize his ideas. The math is complex, but the core argument is philosophical. Critics have problems with the CTMU. Many philosophers and scientists say Langan is playing word games. He redefines God to mean something so abstract that it's meaningless. He claims to prove God exists, but the God he proves is not what most people mean by God. Traditional religious believers want a God who cares about humans, who answers prayers, who has a plan, who judges right and wrong. Langan's God does none of these things in any conventional sense. His God is closer to an impersonal force or principle. Scientists criticize the CTMU for not being testable. A scientific theory must make predictions you can test with experiments. The CTMU makes grand claims about the nature of reality, but offers no way to test whether it's true or false. It's metaphysics, not physics. Philosophers point out that self-reference creates paradoxes. The famous liar paradox, this statement is false. If it's true, it's false. If it's false, it's true. Self-referential systems can be contradictory. Langan claims his model avoids these paradoxes, but many philosophers are not convinced. There's also the problem of consciousness. Langan assumes consciousness is fundamental and can exist independently of physical brains. Most neuroscientists disagree. They think consciousness emerges from physical processes in brains. If consciousness requires brains, then the universe cannot be conscious in the way Langan claims. Langan responds that scientists are trapped in materialism. They assume matter is fundamental and consciousness is derivative. But this assumption is not proven. It might be backwards. Consciousness might be fundamental and matter might be derivative. This debate between materialism and idealism is ancient. Materialists say matter creates mind. Idealists say mind creates matter. The CTMU is an idealist theory. It puts consciousness as the ground of existence. Langan also argues that his theory is testable in principle. If the universe is information-based and self-aware, then reality should show signs of this. The laws of physics should be not just mathematical but semantic. They should carry meaning. They should be self-consistent in ways that go beyond blind mechanical rules. He points to fine-tuning as evidence. The constants of physics are precisely calibrated to allow complex structures like galaxies, stars, planets, and life. Change these constants slightly and nothing complex could exist. This fine-tuning suggests the universe is not random but purposeful. Critics say fine-tuning can be explained by the multiverse. If infinite universes exist with different constants, we naturally find ourselves in one that allows life, because we couldn't exist in the others. This anthropic principle explains fine-tuning without requiring God. Langan counters that the multiverse is not a simpler explanation. It multiplies entities beyond necessity. One self-aware universe that tunes itself is more elegant than infinite unconscious universes that exist for no reason. The debate continues. The CTMU has not convinced mainstream science or philosophy. Most academics don't engage with it seriously. Some dismiss Langan as a crank. Others acknowledge his intelligence but think he's applied it to an unsolvable problem. Langan himself seems unconcerned with academic acceptance. He published his ideas independently. He doesn't seek approval from universities. He lives his life, works his ranch, and continues developing his theory. His supporters see him as a misunderstood genius, a modern Spinoza or Leibniz whose ideas are too advanced for his time. They say future generations will recognize the CTMU as a breakthrough. His detractors see him as someone who mistook verbal cleverness for truth. They say he's built an elaborate structure of words that sounds profound, but doesn't actually explain anything. What's clear is that Langan has attempted something remarkable. Whether he succeeded is debatable, but the attempt itself is noteworthy. He tried to bridge science, mathematics, philosophy, and theology. He tried to answer the deepest questions using rigorous logic. The question of God's existence has been argued for thousands of years. Philosophers have proposed ontological arguments, cosmological arguments, teleological arguments. None have convinced everyone. Believers find them compelling. Skeptics find flaws. Langan's CTMU is another entry in this ancient debate. It's unique in its approach. It combines modern mathematics and physics with classical philosophy. It attempts a synthesis that few have tried. Whether it proves God exists depends on what you mean by prove and what you mean by God. If you mean a personal deity who intervenes in human affairs, the CTMU does not prove that. If you mean a conscious ground of being that is identical with existence itself, then Langan claims logical proof. The deeper question is whether existence itself requires explanation. Some philosophers say no. The universe just is. Existence is brute fact. Asking why it exists is like asking what's north of the North Pole. The question doesn't make sense. Others say existence must have explanation. Nothing happens without reason. Even if that reason is self-contained within existence, it must be there. The universe cannot be arbitrary. Langan is in the second camp. He believes existence requires explanation, and he believes that explanation necessarily involves consciousness. An unconscious universe has no reason to exist. A conscious universe has reason built into its nature. This raises final questions about consciousness itself. What is it? How does it relate to physical reality? Can it exist independently of brains? These questions remain unsolved. The hard problem of consciousness is still hard. If consciousness is fundamental, as Langan claims, then his theory makes sense. If consciousness is emergent, dependent on physical brains, then his theory fails. The whole CTMU rests on assumptions about consciousness that are not proven. So did the smartest man in America prove God exists? That depends on your starting assumptions. If you accept that consciousness can be fundamental and that self-reference can create necessary existence, then his logic follows. If you don't accept these premises, his conclusion fails. What Langan definitely did is create an elaborate, sophisticated attempt to answer the deepest questions through reason alone. Whether he succeeded is still debated, but the attempt itself shows what happens when extreme intelligence turns toward ultimate questions. A man works on a horse ranch in Missouri. He has one of the highest IQs ever recorded. He spent decades thinking about existence, consciousness, and God. He developed a theory that tries to prove God exists through pure mathematics and logic. Most people have never heard of him. Most academics ignore his work. But his ideas remain, waiting to be either validated or forgotten by future generations. If this exploration of Christopher Langan's attempt to prove God exists through mathematics made you think about consciousness, existence, and the limits of logic, hit that like button and subscribe. We're investigating the biggest questions humans can ask and the brilliant minds trying to answer them. Ring the notification bell so you don't miss our next examination of genius, philosophy, and the boundaries of human understanding. Drop a comment with your thoughts. Can God be proven through logic, or is faith the only path? This debate is thousands of years old, but Langan's approach is completely unique.